Go right ahead, Donna. So hello again, everyone. And Donna, we can go to the next slide and even the one after that. Today, we're going to be talking about internship presentation best practices, as well as social media tips and pointers. And you're all going to hear from my colleague, Colette Rudin, who's a senior engineer in our CTO office here at CCAT. And she's fabulous. And a former intern herself, if you didn't have the opportunity to hear her at the kickoff meeting early in June at Trump. And then we're going to have a Q&A for those who joined and didn't hear me say. We will work to unmute you for the Q&A so you can ask some live questions, or you could throw them in the chat throughout the course of the presentation. And then we'll just give you some quick reminders about some upcoming fun events. And that will be the scoop. So I think most of you who had signed up for today have become by now familiar with CCAT, but just as a brief overview, we are an applied technology demonstration and training center. Said differently, we provide research and development, especially to small and medium-sized manufacturers. Much of our work is for Connecticut operations. We do have a bit of state funding, but we also support federal programs. And for those programs, it is oftentimes expanded to organizations, manufacturers, and employees of those manufacturers who are also outside of the state. So we have a focus on advancing technology and introducing new Industry 4.0 technologies, as well as a full and really growing focus on upskilling workforce. Next slide. And at our operation up in East Hartford, we have currently 3 buildings. In one of them, our Advanced Technology Center, we have our Advanced Design, Automation, and Metrology Lab, along with Additive Technologies, Optimization, and Machining. At another location, in a public-private partnership with Pratt and with Goodwin, we have our Advanced Composite Center. And then opened up earlier this year with large funding from the Department of Defense is our Digital Thread Lab, which is an amazing place to come and absorb new trainings. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. So thanks. So we continue to grow. I had 2 more companies who signed up their interns just this week. So it is not too late if you have friends at other companies working as an intern in a manufacturer here in Connecticut to have them sign up. And shoot them my email if there's any questions. I'm happy to take any questions from them or their employer. But really, we love this slide. Thank you, Colette, for being the master updater for this in the first place. And if you don't see your logo, we will be adding it because we'll have the real full page before the summer is over. And with that, I'm going to turn over the conversation to Colette, and she is going to take it away. Thanks, Colette.
Great. Thank you, Eileen.
You
Hi,
got it.
everyone. Thanks for joining the webinar today. And I did just want to say thank you for joining Connecticut in general for your internships. I know that when I was in your shoes, I definitely couldn't have imagined my trajectory in terms of my career, both in the state of Connecticut as well as within the manufacturing industry. And I think that there are so many opportunities here for you to take advantage of within this state. And if you are interested in learning more about manufacturing as well as just other opportunities, please let me know. I'm happy to connect you with any of my network within this state as well as outside of the state. So just to tell you a little bit about myself and my background as an engineer. So I actually have 2 degrees. I have a bachelor's and a master's degree in mechanical engineering from Worcester Polytechnic Institute in Massachusetts. I grew up in New York, so Connecticut was a happy medium when I was looking for internships coming out of school. So I started my first internship actually at Otis Elevator Company, which is located in Farmington, Connecticut, not too far away from where I'm currently based. And I was really focused on mechanical engineering there. I interned there for 3 summers, and my first summer, I actually was so enthralled with the company that I just really wanted to stay and come back. And so was able to make that happen. And I think that my story by staying at Otis and interning there 3 times is something that can easily happen for you if you are willing to just take that leap of faith. And if you are interested in talking more about that, again, I'm definitely available to help you. So at Otis, I then transitioned coming on full time after graduating in December of 2019. And at that point, I started as a mechanical engineer at Otis Elevator. I focused mainly on testing, qualification, design of coated steel belts, so suspension systems of elevators. So when you think about an elevator and how it's held up, that's really what my key focus was at Otis. At that point, I worked at Otis for about 3 years before coming to CCAT. And that's really when I wanted to merge my love of technical communication with my love of engineering and the technical sciences behind it. So on the side, while I was at Otis, I actually worked for a woman who teaches engineers how to give and create technical presentations related to engineering topics. And that was just something that really sparked an interest in me. And I wanted to combine that with my engineering job at Otis. And so CCAT definitely gave me that opportunity. And that's really what we're going to focus on talking about today. Both communication within your presentation. So if you're giving a final presentation at your company this summer, if you're giving an interim presentation throughout the summer on your project progress, and then we'll jump into some more about social media presence on your LinkedIn. That's really the focus today, only because that's your professional digital footprint and something that we want to help you build as you are gaining experience this summer that is very meaningful to your career. And we do want to help you highlight that. So if you jump to the next slide. So in terms of, we'll start off with presentation best practices, and that's really where the first half of this presentation will focus. We're going to talk about 3 different topics. The first one being myths of presentation slides. The second being a couple ways to improve your technical communication. So when you're talking about your projects, whether that's technical in nature or more business focused, I think that communication skills really can go a long way in any topic. And then as well as focusing on tips on how to practice your presentation. So especially if you're giving a final presentation this summer, you really want to practice, hone in those skills. But how do we make that happen? How do we help you improve? What are ways that are tried and true in ensuring that you are able to give the presentation that you want to give that highlights just how much effort you put in throughout the summer? So we'll jump right in with some myths of presentation slides. So I wanted to put this together just because I think that sometimes when we're building presentations, it can be hard to understand what counts as a good quote unquote presentation. So the first one that I wanted to talk about is really the fact that sometimes people say use as few slides as possible. And that is not necessarily the best way to get your point across or to communicate the information that you want to. Because sometimes that can actually force you to put too much information on one slide, as well as then while you're presenting, lose your train of thought within that presentation. So if you have too much going on one slide, it can be hard to understand what that key takeaway from your slide may be, which it makes it more fuzzy for both you as the presenter and then the audience as well. So when you're thinking about building your presentation, I think that it's helpful to have one key takeaway from your slide, whether or not that's technical in nature, whether it's more high level as to what the project goals were, or if it's just one key topic that you want to focus in on. So for example, on this slide, I really want you to take away the myths of the presentation slides that I think you could take back as you start to build your own presentations at your position. So the second one that I want to focus on is talking about visuals. Now, I think that there's a misconception that you shouldn't show the same visual multiple times in a presentation, and that isn't necessarily true. If there is a graph that is really a high level overview of the takeaways from your project that you've been working on, or if there's a diagram that really hones in on whatever subsystem you may be working on, or whether it's a diagram of the business practice that you're developing, and you really want to dive into each part of that process, that visual can be used multiple times throughout your presentation and be referenced in order to be able to share different topics that you might want to hit on, but then also always tying it back to the main topic. That actually is very helpful for your audience and actually gives them a sense of where you are in the presentation so that then they can follow along with you and know where you are from start to finish. Even when you're giving, even if it's the most wonderful presentation on earth, any audience wants to know when it will be over, and that type of visual can actually help you build out your timeline of your presentation and talk. So the third one that I want to hit on is that the slides used to present should be exactly the same that are shared before or after. So that's actually a myth. You do not have to share the exact same slides out before your presentation and after your presentation that you actually use to present. You can always edit them. You can always include notes. One great way to be able to share out specific topics that might not be written on your slides is to share notes with the presentation slides themselves. It can actually make it more impactful so that you can share the key takeaways without having to write it on the slides and clutter it up with too many words. Another myth is that you shouldn't change the presentation template. So I'm sure that probably most of your companies have a presentation template that they're asking you to use. Even my company has a presentation template that they ask you to use for different presentations. But that does not mean you have to stick to it to a T. You can always change the design. You can change where different logos are. You can remove logos. And that actually goes into the next myth that I wanted to touch on. Your company logo does not need to be on every slide of a presentation. Although it's something that is just general practice, it's something that people have accepted into what they see in the business world. It can actually be refreshing sometimes to remove it because it means that you're really putting thought into what's on the slide. It means that you're designing it on your own, that you're putting your own spin on what you want to talk about, and can be very impactful when you actually switch it up a little bit throughout your presentation. Another myth that I do want to hit on is actually that a title slide must be the first slide of your presentation. And I don't think that that's necessarily true. I remember that in my final presentation of one of my internships, I actually started off with an anecdote. I started off with a black slide behind me so that the audience would focus just on me. And then at that point, I was able to not only introduce my topic, introduce myself, and then jump into the technical title of the top of the presentation. Sometimes if you just start off with a slide that's just, this is my presentation about X, Y, and Z, can be a little dry. So switching it up can actually help you improve the audience interaction as well as just the impact of your presentation. People will remember you for it. And then the last slide, the last myth that I wanted to talk about is that you always have to have a slide up during the presentation. Sometimes a PowerPoint slide is not necessarily the most impactful way to get across your message. So in that sense, you can put a black slide up behind you. You can actually turn the slides off. And at that point, you can either have the audience focus just on you, on what you are saying, or you can have props. Let's say you're working on a project where you have something that you physically made or that you designed. You can actually bring that with you, and that becomes extremely impactful because then everybody in the audience knows what you've been working on, and it becomes just a little bit more interactive in that sense. Then talking about the second portion of this section of the overall webinar is looking at technical communication. So here are 4 ways that you can improve your technical communication as you start building your presentation. So first, you want to be an audience-focused communicator. You really want to be able to share the information that your audience might be interested in. So let's say you're focused on an engineering topic. Maybe your engineering team wants to understand the entire design process of whatever project you're working on. However, you might also have executives, you might also have the marketing team, you might also have the business side of the corporation within the room as well, which means that you also want to share out how is your project going to impact the business on a greater level, not just the nitty-gritty engineering topics. And I think that sometimes you need to take a step back and understand who will be listening to you in order to best communicate that topic. Second, you want to hook your audience right away. So how do you grasp them? How do you connect with them right off the bat? So thinking about the presentation and webinar that I'm talking to today, the best way that I can share that is I started this talk not with jumping into presentation best practices, but talking about my experience being an intern. And that's how I can connect with you, even if I'm not directly interacting with you on a daily basis or working at your specific company. So there are small ways that you can hook your audience into your talk without having to do anything crazy or talk about something that is completely new to you. The third way that you can improve your technical communication is really to know your main message. Know what you want to talk about in each slide. Make sure that you hit it at the beginning and end of each slide. And then your audience will know exactly what they're supposed to take away from your talk. And then finally, practice. So, practice truly does make a difference when you're talking about giving a presentation. Some people are just really comfortable in stepping up to the plate and talking about a topic that they may or may not have a lot of experience in. However, even the most experienced presenter does need practice. So, for example, I definitely need practice as well. I love presenting, but that doesn't mean that I can just step up to a presentation and say, let's go, let's talk about this for hours on end. So that actually goes into the next slide. And that's where we're going to focus on tips on how you can practice your presentation. So when I started my engineering career in terms of presenting, I really had to learn how to best practice a presentation for myself. So this does not apply to everyone. Everybody has their own method of practicing for a presentation, and it does not have to look the same. So some tips on how I practice is that first I time my talk. So I want to know exactly how many slides I have and how long that's going to take. So we have a 45-minute webinar today. Want to leave some time for Q&A at the end. How long would that take? Talk through your slides just on your own, and then you'll be able to understand exactly what your timetable should be in order to meet your goal. Second, devote uninterrupted time to practicing. So practicing can always be the thing that gets pushed. It can be on your calendar, if something comes up, you say, I'll do it later. And at the same time, it's very important because it will make a difference. So putting it on your calendar, making sure it doesn't get moved can really impact your performance. Second, stand up to rehearse your presentation. So if you're planning on giving your presentation in person, standing up and presenting as if you're going to be in the room can make a very large impact on how you deliver, only because you're practicing on how you will actually give the presentation on that final day. The next tip is to say your presentation out loud and not just in your head. It's really easy to sit at your computer, type in some notes on the presentation slide and say, yep, that's my message. That's what I want to say. And we'll move on. I'll be fine in the presentation. But the best way to practice so that you know how you're going to say those words is to say your presentation out loud. And that can be anywhere, right? So sometimes I actually will practice my presentation in the car. I'll just talk myself through it because I know what the timeline should be. I know what the talk track should be. And at the same time, you don't need the slides in front of you. Just talk to yourself in the car. Everybody can sing in the car, which means that you can talk to yourself in the car as well. And that's just something that I do because it doesn't interrupt my day. It doesn't take time away from anything else. And it just helps me talk through what I know I want to say. The next tip is to rehearse your opening and ending lines more than other sections. So people will remember your presentation at the beginning and the end. The middle of the presentation sometimes gets fuzzy because you won't remember every slide that somebody presents to you, but it can be very helpful if you hook them right at the beginning and then just share out a closing message at the end for a key takeaway. And then finally, practice in a location that's similar to the actual presentation. Some of you may be presenting on Teams for your final presentation. Some of you may be presenting in person. And it's important that you are comfortable in either setting. So if you're presenting on Teams, maybe that means you set up a Teams meeting with yourself and you just talk on the webinar to yourself and record it so that you hear how you're delivering. And then vice versa. If you're going to present in a conference room, go to that conference room. Figure out how you're going to set up your laptop. Put up your slides and then talk to them in that room. And it will really help you be prepared for that presentation at the end. So I think that wraps up the presentation tips side of this webinar. And then I would like to jump into looking at your social media presence. So why is that important? And how does that influence how you can actually make connections within the industry? So first, you can flip to the next slide, Donna. So first, it helps you build a strong network. So it allows you to engage with your connections in a different format on honestly a daily basis. It allows you to explore companies. So if I like something from a company that you may have never heard of, you can go explore that extremely easily. It does help you talk to recruiters. So I think that it's important to note that recruiters do reach out to you once you're in industry. I myself have been reached out to, whether it's via phone call and it's like, hey, I saw your resume on LinkedIn, or a LinkedIn message. People will reach out to you once you start to put experience up there, and it can help you and influence what your trajectory is in your career. It can also help you apply for jobs. So I know that as you grow throughout your college career, you will be applying to more internships, and then you will be applying to full-time positions. So specifically, LinkedIn is wonderful for that. It really helps you to provide that way to scroll through some level of social media while also looking for jobs, and providing a platform to apply really easily. Even if it's just on your phone and you already have your resume uploaded, it's something that can just make that process easier for you to jump into. On the flip side, it can also help you build your brand. So who do you want to be as you emerge into the industry of corporate America? How do you share your authentic voice? Who do you want to show up as? And then how much do you want to post? Some people want to post frequently, some people want to engage frequently, others don't. And there is no right or wrong way to do that, but as long as it's authentic to who you are. It can also help you to start conversations and share your point of view on different topics. I know that myself, I've always been really interested in additive technologies. So I follow a lot of different additive companies on LinkedIn just to see what the new technology is, and to understand cool applications that might come up. And so those conversations I find really interesting and may be impactful for you as well. And then finally, it also helps you to demonstrate your knowledge and your passions. It really helps you meld your personal life with your professional life into a way that can really help you grow both inside and outside of the workplace. So how do we do this, right? How do we jump into our LinkedIn profiles? I know that I've connected with some of you on LinkedIn before, but others of you may just be building your LinkedIn profile today, and that is completely okay. And if you have questions on this, if you want help, if you want someone to review it, please let me know. I'm happy to help on that front. So really, step one is add your picture. Nobody wants to see a LinkedIn profile where there is not a picture or a profile picture to be looked at, only because then who are you? Who is this person? How do I connect with you? And so we did find some stats. Actually, members with a photo get up to 9 times more connection requests because you know who this person is, up to 21 times more profile views, and 36 times more messages. So that actually can make a huge impact on how you build your network and who's willing to connect with you. So just adding a picture, even if it's not necessarily a professional headshot, can really make a difference. I know I didn't have a professional headshot done actually until this year. Otherwise, somebody had just taken a picture of me on an iPhone and it works. It's all that you need. So it makes a difference. Highly recommend to jump into that. Next, build out your profile. So that's really where you have not only your profile picture, but also your name, your title, what you're interested in, and then that background picture. It adds to your brand. It shares who you are just a little bit more, and you can add your spin to it. So this is a picture of my boss, Jackie Garofano's LinkedIn profile. And so you can see that she's added not only her profile picture and her title at CCAP, but also just a little bit more to share who she is and how she shows up in the manufacturing industry. So step 2, add your industry. So this is a little bit deeper into your profile. And so this is where, let's say you're in manufacturing, you can add manufacturing. If you're on the business side, you can add more a business nature or engineering. It's definitely an option. So when you add your industry, we found that members with industry information receive up to 9 times more profile views, which is huge because you want your profile to be seen. You want people to connect with you, and you just want to have a presence in the world as you grow in your career. So step 3 is talking about drafting a compelling summary. This is where you can share any bit of information that you want to about yourself. This is your elevator pitch without having to talk to someone. And this is where you can kind of brag about yourself. talk about your accomplishments, talk about what you want to be in the industry. And so on the next slide, we actually have an example. And so this again is Jackie's profile, and it's her about section. When I first met Jackie, I actually was able to work my own about profile off of hers. So obviously it's not the same. We have different accomplishments. We're different people. We have different aspirations. But at the same time, this type of description is something that I found really impactful because I immediately connected with it, because there's just enough information to learn who she is, but also enough information to understand, hey, that's someone that I want to look up to because of just how many accomplishments she has. So if you have any questions on how to start building out this portion of your profile, please let me know. Again, happy to help. Then step is to detail your work experience. So you are obviously all in internships right now, which means you have work experience to share. Please share it. Add more than the title and add a little bit as if it's your resume. So actually in my profile, I've been able to just pull whatever I have as descriptions in my resume and just upload that into LinkedIn. And it's super easy. You're going to make a resume anyway. You're going to write that up, use it to your advantage, and put it on your social media profile. In addition, add examples of your work. This is where, if let's say you're on the design side, you can add pictures of your portfolio. If you are really interested in presenting and you love making presentations, upload a presentation. If you're really ambitious and have a patent already, you can upload your completed patent application into your profile. All those kinds of documents can be really helpful in sharing, again, who you are and what your professional experience is. Next, you can add volunteer experience. So I know that a lot of people are really interested in volunteering and helping out your community. So add that. We want to know who you are. We want to know whether or not you help the community outside of your corporate career, because it can make a difference in how you are seen in terms of how you can contribute to the community at work. The next tip is to really post original content. So when you make a post, it doesn't need to be anything spectacular. However, you want it to be specific to you. If you want it to be something that you're really interested in, that you want to share, you want to highlight, whether it's an event that your company's hosting and you're joining, whether it's an accomplishment that you've made, share it out to your network. People want to hear, they want to know, and they want to celebrate you. The next tip is to really make sure that you're connecting with as many people as possible. So at this point, LinkedIn has all of the same methods of connecting with people as other apps, whether it's Venmo or Facebook or whatever. They have the QR codes that you can scan. They have the links that you can share. I shared my link in the chat earlier. So really, there are plenty of ways for you to be able to connect easily with people without it being burdensome at all. And then finally, find your community. So for example, we actually have a LinkedIn group for Connecticut manufacturing interns, and that's something that you all can join so that you can connect with each other. And I think it's a great way to just have a platform for everyone to create that community, and really build your network. So you're interning in Connecticut now. Let's say you come back and work here full time. These are the people who will support you as you grow in industry. You want to keep those connections, and it can really make a difference as you grow in your career. So to sum it all up today, there are two key takeaways that I want you to take away from this webinar. First of all, if you're presenting in your internship, be confident, practice your presentation, and know that you are the subject matter expert of your content. And from that standpoint, you will be great. If you need help, if you want advice, please let me know, and I'm happy to help you there. On the flip side, in terms of your social media presence and your branding, be yourself, be authentic, and just be able to share and celebrate any accomplishments that you've made in your career thus far, which is huge because you all have plenty of accomplishments. You're all in your internships now, and share it out with the world on LinkedIn. So overall, if you have any questions, let me know. We're going to unmute you, I believe, so that you can raise your hand and ask questions, and we'll leave some time for Q&A now.
Colette, this was fabulous. Thank you again. And for all of your pointers, as well as all of the recommendations that you have for people and offer that you have to genuinely connect with you and take advantage of your expertise. And I say to everybody, take her up on that. Colette is amazing and inspiring and a ton of fun and has great connections and insights. So I think Donna's working on activating people if they wanted to ask a question live, and certainly you could put them in the chat. But is there anyone, you'd have to unmute yourself, I think. So in your lower left-hand corner should probably be your unmute button. So are there any questions? I loved one of your examples, Colette, that you gave, which was you follow companies that you are interested in because you know they are doing cool things in additives. So it's not where you're working now or where you had worked necessarily, although I know you're connected with all of us anyhow, but you're following others that you look up to. What other advice do you have about associations and even belonging to other groups or following associations?
Yeah, I think that especially in college, there are so many associations that you can join, follow, be involved with, and that can actually transition to your professional world. So for example, when I was in college, I was not necessarily crazy involved with the Society of Women Engineers, but once I jumped into the professional world, that actually became a huge network for me. And I was actually at Otis able to get a full membership and then be able to go to their national conference that was held. And so I think that it really can make a difference in your professional development, and it's something that you can grow into throughout your career.
Absolutely. I think Donna indicated everybody should be able to unmute themselves or to talk if they have a question. So I'll pause here again. You're so thorough, Colette, that, you know, you shared what they need.
Colette, how often do you update your LinkedIn profile?
As often as I update my resume.
Or as often as maybe you're added to a board or you have a new accomplishment or you want to change something out also, right? Like maybe you've had something new that you want to feature. Well, this is fabulous. I wish when I was first starting out in LinkedIn that I heard this presentation, or when I was first doing presentations that I heard this great presentation. So thank you. I know Donna asked in the chat, how many of you, or do all of you on this meeting have your LinkedIn profile already? If you don't, again, as Colette said, that's no problem. Start it now, though. Kyle, I'm glad you do. Good. You're all in. You're going to milk it dry. So we want you to take this additional experience and help it make you stronger. Okay. Well, I think we're going to move on to the next section. And Colette, if you want to stay on, I think you could add some great comments here. So please jump in with me if you'd like. So, and Will Brakeman is saying hello. Will, did you have a question?
No, I was just saying that I had a LinkedIn. I was answering the question in the chat from Donna.
All right, great. All right, great. Thanks, Will. I'm glad.
No problem.
You got it. So there's still ways to continue to engage in the program through the end of this month of July, as well as into early August. Some of you were on 2 sessions that we held. They were a repeat of a program talking about digital transformation and trainings that we offer here. You would need to talk to your supervisor about your enrolling in that program. They would have to help facilitate that, but we'd be happy to take offline questions about it or provide you with additional information. So any questions, please let us know. But what we are offering is really such unique, in-depth information, and it is all going to be so important in the changes coming ahead and that are already underway in the world of manufacturing. We'll also be releasing in another week or two an end of summer survey. And I would love to have your feedback, and so that we can look at what did we do that worked well for you? What other ideas do you have for our improvement? Because like any organization, we're in continuous improvement. We'll have a social event at Bear's Barbecue just off of 91 in New Haven. Parking is there and for free, so don't worry about that. But that event starts at 5 p.m. And I hope to see all of you and many, many more. And we have added a tour of CCAT's Advanced Technology Center. So that was a special request. And Jackie Garofano, whose profile you heard Colette reference on LinkedIn, she will be leading that. Probably Colette will be joining me there as well. So that will be fabulous. And we're up in East Hartford, right near Rensselaer Stadium on the Raytheon campus. And then if you haven't yet followed us on social or joined that hashtag CT Manufacturing Intern group, we would recommend you do. It's a way you're going to find each other more quickly as well. And then we want you to return next summer. So keeping that in mind, I'm going to ask Donna to flip to the next slide. This will give you a visual of looking into the Digital Thread Lab and the Automation Nexus, where you do training and learning on the right-hand side of this visual, but then there's hands-on training and experience where you can use some of our equipment, some cutting-edge equipment, to apply new processes. Colette, anything else you'd want to add about Digital Thread? There are 3 different sections to the training. We always have an awareness course on Tuesday mornings. And then the way the series flows, digital design and costing are the first week of every month, digital manufacturing in the second week, and digital quality assurance in the third week of every month, most months, unless sometimes we have a little staffing shifting around, but that's the way our typical flow goes. And then on the last slide, many of you have been at many of these tours. We'll next be going to number 5 next week, Wednesday, July 17th at Northeast Scientific. So that tour is in the afternoon, and registration for this and the events following, Bear's Barbecue and the tour August 8th at CCAT, are all to be found on the events section of the ccat.us/interns website. And just to wrap up, we hope your experience with us this summer, and as things start to wind down for the summer, ultimately, that you keep us in mind as part of your training and upskilling development. When you follow us on social, you'll see what we have in terms of upcoming events. We will post when we're doing summits, like summits on digital transformation or summits on focus on additive. We promote those most often on LinkedIn. So that's the best place to also not only follow Colette and connect with Colette and myself, but to also follow CCAT so that you'll, get that in your LinkedIn feed. But know that we want to help you with your ongoing development. And as our organization continues to expand, especially with a lot of Department of Defense and other federal funding, we are going to be adding on more, not only in terms of digital transformation courses and classes for employees to take, but also additive manufacturing courses and classes. Those typically really are, they're not geared for a student just signing themselves up who's still in college. But again, when you land in another internship next summer or in your full-time jobs, know that that's a growing part of our operation and the support we offer to Connecticut and beyond Connecticut as well. So there's our information, and that is a wrap for today. And I'll just give you one more chance. Are there any more questions before we let you go back to work? Going once, going twice. I guess we'll call it a wrap. Thank you again so very much, Colette. You're amazing. And this is a fabulous presentation. And thank you to all the interns. I look forward, hopefully, to seeing you next week at Northeast Scientific. Thanks, Kyle. Thanks, everyone. Bye.